now transition into talking about cybersecurity and how we're going to bridge the gap when it comes to building a cyber workforce. In the next session, we have a panel that will discuss the challenges of having this type of a workforce and how getting there and having the right talent is going to work. Moderating the panel is Peter Meehan, who is SVP International and Partnership at IQ4 Corp and co-founder of Cybersecurity Workforce Alliance. The panel will consist of Jeanette Manfra, who is Director the Government Security and Compliance at Google Cloud, Dr. Besma Momani, Assistant Vice President of International Relations at the University of Waterloo, Gaurav Kirti, who is Deputy Chief Executive Officer at the Cybersecurity Agency of Singapore, and Osman Fez, who is Chief Information and Operating Officer at AMTD. So let's go now live to Peter for the panel discussion.
Thank you for the introduction. And hello and welcome to this session on how we can collaborate to fulfill this seemingly insatiable demand for cybersecurity professionals. And thank you for the introduction of the team. They represent industry, education, government, and technology. And I'm sure we're going to benefit from their experience and their opinions. So let's get straight into this because we've only got 25 minutes. And what we really want to focus on are two major issues that are driving risk and insecurity. Issue one is the COVID pandemic, and it's accelerated the adoption of cloud and remote working. And this so-called new normal has opened up an exponential threat landscape, making it easier for threat actors to target SMEs and their supply chains to institutions and other sectors. It also opens up more accidents that can happen for leakages. Issue two is there was already a growing skills gap before the pandemic. Yet issue one has made it worse. So how do we accelerate and scale the supply of skilled talent, and where do they come from? And let's ask the panel for their ideas. So Osman, as an industry leader and employer, you're at the center of this storm. What do you see happening, particularly in Singapore, and what would you like to see going forward?
Thank you, Peter. Great to have you all. Firstly, I would say that cybercrime has overtaken the global drug industry. It's become so big. Nobody is safe, let alone Singapore. With COVID-19, this has taken a different trajectory. While in one side, there is a huge digital adoption, on the other side, this risk of getting your data being hacked has become exponential. So this is, I think, a very interesting and a timely conversation to hear from the panel and the experts who are representing from the West to learn some of these ways, how do we address the gap. I would particularly say about SMEs, because I think they are the most vulnerable. In one hand, they are relatively small shop. On the other hand, they have a huge pressure of staying relevant and adopting to the digital ways of serving clients. So it's an ongoing challenge. And Peter, you know that we have joined hands and formed an alliance called AtWise Center of Excellence in Singapore. And the whole idea is to bring the academia, the industry, and the professionals together to scale up in terms of raising the awareness, giving the right skills, and basically trying to mitigate as much as we can the risks that we are aware of. But as we all know, the entry barrier to this risk is very low. So it would be good to hear from Jeanette, Basma, and Gaurav, who is also looking at Singapore as a country to protect the data for the individual as well as for the corporates.
Excellent. So, Basma, employers like our friend Osman here, they need employees, ready-made people now every month of the year. Yet academic institutions release graduates at the end of, say, a 2 or 4 year degree. And frequently, cybersecurity training only starts after they've had the onboarding period with them. So look, we really respect Canada's and University Waterloo's leadership, in particular in the cooperative education space. So what can Waterloo do to collaborate on the international stage to accelerate and scale the talent supply chain in Singapore and indeed globally?
Thank you. Well, I think, what makes University of Waterloo very special is that we have a very important relationship with industry, with employers, and really trying to take our students and give them opportunities to work with those companies. I think we've heard from many people that it's not just the great technical skills that come out of the universities that employers are looking for, but they're also looking for people with soft skills, with the ability to be able to work in an organization almost from day one, to know how to do all the daily little things, from managing emails to indeed being able to have that critical thinking skills to really address these really pressing challenges that we're all facing with cybersecurity. So our approach at the University of Waterloo, and I call it our secret sauce, is to have that very strong relationship with industry, where we have the largest deployment of co-op students that work with industry from day one. Our university students don't come for 4 years, they all come almost for 5 years, which means that they have 1 year of practical in industry, in company experience that they take with them upon graduation that makes them highly desirable. We are very much connected to fantastic partners, including AMTD and others, who indeed want to have our students because of their very strong technical skills, but again, because of that soft skills. But I think there's more that the industry, or I should say the education sector, can do. I mean, we talk about the role of universities, but we know this is a process that needs to begin, frankly, from day one. If you're going to teach children coding, it needs to happen very early on. If we're going to get diversity, which I'd be happy to talk about soon, in the workforce, which continues to be a challenge for a lot of people, you also need to ensure that those groups that are more vulnerable and marginalized, who don't have access to those kinds of skills, get exposure from day one, and frankly, make the job attractive. Cybersecurity is an attractive profession, but I don't think we do a great job of selling it as a profession, if you will. So there's lots to be done, and certainly the education sector has a big role to play in that.
Indeed. And before I move from you, could I ask you this question about, we see that a lot of people around the world think that cybersecurity equals tech, yet those professionals know that the cybersecurity risk frameworks and that there's many different control points, and only 4 or so actually require technical skills. So how about spreading this to the other faculty and bringing in liberal arts? And what about other things like the underserved and things like this?
Yeah, absolutely. That's something I'm very passionate about. Social science and humanities have a lot to contribute to this space. In fact, if you really want to sort of be blunt about it, that's what we teach in the liberal arts is critical thinking skills. And for a really good cybersecurity analyst, we need someone who has those critical thinking skills. It's not just about coding and tech and really understanding the computer science element of it or infrastructure. It's also being able to, use sound judgment, and that comes with critical thinking skills. So there's an important role for all aspects of campus, if you will, to play an important role in creating this workforce. And indeed, at the end of the day, let's be honest, there is a deficit of jobs, and we're looking at an enormous potential of great unemployment across the world. It is a real challenge. So we need to, I think, with industry and education, work together to try and make cybersecurity jobs more attractive. And it's not necessarily very attractive because we sell it as, frankly, people are going to sit in a basement doing coding where there's no sun. And that's not true. So the job itself needs to be advertised in a way that's a little more attractive. We can do that. I think there's a lot of opportunity. And we also need to widen our description of our job description in attracting people to apply. And gender here is a big important aspect of this, because we know that if you have a job description that is very, very specific and has, let's say, 10 requirements, a woman won't apply unless she has all 9. A man will apply if he has 2. So this is really interesting. It just says that we need to have job descriptions that also are broad, are flexible, and increasingly think about using words like keeping our community safe, right? I mean, talk about cyber safety rather than cyber security and cyber attacks, which frankly are words and codes that maybe attract, to use gendered norms, unfortunately here, more men to apply than women. So there's lots of work to be done, and I'm sure we'll hear from the fantastic colleagues on the panel with industry on the ways that they attempt to sort of ensure that they have that kind of diversity too.
Well, you certainly rang some bells with me there, because when we formed the Cybersecurity Workforce Alliance in 2015, there was just a small group of CISOs and some advanced educational thinkers with us. And when we ask the employers what you want, we want awareness. Awareness of what? Awareness of our brands. But you are these big people. Yes, but the young don't know that. Okay. And what do you want? I want awareness. I want awareness of the cyber careers out there, because most people don't know that there's at least 52 jobs in the NIST framework, for example, that we want people for. And the other thing about that is 5 years on, we've put over 5,000 people through the community, and 43% of them women. So you've run some bells for me. But let's turn to Gaurav. Gaurav, I know you've got some really good opinions about awareness and skills. So from the cybersecurity agency's perspective, how do you see academia and skills-based learning in particular coming together to build this talent pipeline, to get the best and the brightest, as you once said, to have them inspired into this profession?
Thanks, Peter. I mean, that's a fantastic question, and actually it really builds on something that both Besma and Osman have said already. The first thing is we need to start by not just educating the cyber workforce, but educating people that they should want to get into the cyber workforce. So Besma's absolutely right. We're fortunate that we're a national agency, so we actually do target the entire population, try and encourage them to think about cybersecurity in a different way. Awareness is critical, and it's not just awareness of strong passwords and 2FA and all the things that tips and tricks to get people to stay safe online, but awareness that cybersecurity in and of itself is not just people in a basement wearing hoodies. So that education is something that we do very young. We go out to students from teenage and up, and to try and expose them to that. But we talk about now, when you specific to workforce development, you've got academic education, and this is education that's provided in universities. I fully agree. It's not just computer science. We have people from all sorts of backgrounds. And I would venture a bet that none of us in this room have a cybersecurity degree, largely because that didn't exist. But that doesn't hinder us, because we've applied the skills that we learned in whatever background we had. We've upskilled ourselves during training, certification, whatever it is, and we found a way to contribute to cybersecurity. We're trying to see how to do this better now. So in Singapore, we churn out 800 graduates a year from polytechnics and universities in cybersecurity as an academic field. But we don't think that's sufficient. We do think there's a huge opportunity for us to tap mid-career professionals, upskill them, and in the same way that I ended up from computer science, going through the military, taking a bunch of courses, and now ending up in cybersecurity, I think a lot of other people have that opportunity to transfer existing skill sets in operational technology, in factory machinery, in whatever skill set they have, into cybersecurity. And it's not technical again. The last point I wanted to end on is the talent question. And here it's really a dilemma. One of the biggest problems we have in cybersecurity is not just that cybersecurity has a strange, slightly weird order around it where people are sitting in a basement with hoodies. The real problem is that we're competing against software engineers. The young person who's 17 or 18, who's looking at a university track ahead, looks at the potential for a career in software development and the potential for a career in cybersecurity. And if you're thinking about the baseline career, both are fine. But if you read the news about unicorns and the billion-dollar companies and the startups that come out, the vast majority tend to be computer science. So the talent does tend to flow into computer science, even though those people have the right skill sets to go into the technical fields of cybersecurity. And so for the technical parts of cybersecurity, we do have a great challenge, because in the private sector, if you're a software developer, you're competing against other companies. But in cybersecurity, you're not competing against other companies to make a better product. You're competing against the bad guys who could have nation-state resources on their side. And they could want to do really bad things to your company, to your country. And so the defensive talent that we need to step up our game to attract them. We're going young, we're trying to persuade them, we're trying to change the image of cybersecurity. We do think that it's very important to attract diverse people into this community and into this profession. So that's something that we care a lot about. We have a lot of girls in cyber programs. And I think eventually we're going to get there, but the challenge is for the peak talent and for the mid-careers, we need to do a little bit more.
Gaurav, just to add to what Gaurav said, I don't know, Gaurav, I don't envy your job. How do you sleep at night? But the dilemma I see actually, and probably can hear from Janet and Basp as well, in one hand, we have certain skilled resources who are coming through the academia and certification. But the speed at which the digital adoptions are happening, I see this jaw widening.
Especially last year.
Yeah, so that's the issue in my mind, that how do we address that? Because in the industry, in one hand, we are pushing digital adoption and clients are much more willing to take on digital channels because of COVID. But how do we address that gap? Because as you said, that these nations, actors, and the other threats that comes with it, and also the national awareness. I mean, while we may think that phishing or not clicking the email, those are hygiene 101, but often I have done this testing. Many senior people in the corporates, they do click those files. Those attempts or phishing mails that we orchestrate to see and test the resilience. It's often people in a rush, they're doing those kind of things. So I don't know. It'll be great to hear, is there a magic silver bullet that we can actually scale up?
Is Google selling one today?
You're asking for a magic bullet in a long game, but I think what we brought together here is industry, education, government, and technology. So let's hear from Jeanette next. As to, where are we? How can large corporations like Google and small to medium enterprises? I mean, you're not immune from this anyway, but how can you help collaborate to bridge the skills gap, and what sort of standards can we leverage to ensure sort of consistency of competency and supply, that when it's delivered, it's to the standard we want?
Absolutely. Thanks for the question. And for a bit of background on myself, before I joined Google about a year ago, I spent about 20 years in the U.S. military and civilian government building what is now the Cyber and Infrastructure Security Agency. And I led the Cybersecurity Directorate, my last job, and which is the U.S. version of the Cybersecurity Agency. And so I want to just for a minute before I talk about Google, the work kind of more broadly that I think is really gaining momentum in the United States around the National Initiative for Cyber Education, or NICE, and being able to really start to talk about what cybersecurity as a discipline means, and having a taxonomy that can be consistent across multiple industries, I think is really important. And for people to understand that, both as employers and how they categorize their positions. Oftentimes, if you look for a cybersecurity analyst, it can mean a variety of different things. And so the more that we can start to standardize some of these sub-disciplines and have that kind of common taxonomy, the more it will help in terms of building degree programs, particularly interdisciplinary degree programs that are bringing legal and traditional humanities and computer science and engineering together. So it is such a cross-disciplinary function. We also spend a lot of time, and continue to do this at Google, around both a broader awareness and really from kindergarten on up, what it means to be safe online and what you as a user should be doing. But I always saw, even just having those awareness, it's at a very young age, it starts to get them to think about, well, maybe this actually would be an interesting career for me. So, even if all they learn is how to be, a safer digital citizen and a better part of the community, that's great. But really also thinking about those programs as a way to introduce cybersecurity and the various different facets of that discipline for a broader community at a young age. There's great programs in the Girl Scouts of America and others where just starting to get children earlier and earlier thinking about this. I also think it's important for us as cybersecurity professionals to leverage initiatives that are going on in broader STEM. There's a lot of money, a lot of resourcing, and both in helping understand, getting education, it's in STEM, and making sure cybersecurity is built in to those curricula. as well as leveraging existing retraining programs. As a veteran, I'm, like to work very closely with veterans programs, and people coming out of the military is a great opportunity to introduce cybersecurity as a training option for them, looking at other underrepresented populations where you've already got investments in your country to try to target them for either STEM or other careers, really try to focus those and building cybersecurity curriculum into existing successful ones. At Google, we have a huge need for security professionals, both very deeply technical engineers, as well as people who understand risk and people who can translate what technical risk means to what a board wants to understand. And it's not just internal to us, we need our customers to be able to have that as well. And so we have, as well as our peers, developed certification programs where people can, specialize in security. They can understand the cloud and have that foundation, and then they can build a security specialization. And it's not just to come work at Google, but that they can have that certification and now have a differentiator for other jobs. We started talking
to broaden that. So, I know from what you were saying there that the NIST framework doesn't just describe roles and the work that needs to participate there, it just describes learning outcomes, which is why we're collaborating with Waterloo to combine academic learning with work-based learning in the co-op. So that is something there. So, you've got a little point to finish on that. Were you? Okay.
Can I echo what Jeanette said?
Just on 3 minutes left, and let's just turn to Osman here. That we seem to we're in the room because we agreed to be here and we know what we want to do. Osman, we recently have an agreement put together where AMTD is going to lead an initiative in Singapore. Perhaps you could share that with the audience a little now before we head towards the wrap up.
No, thank you. I'll try to quickly address that. I don't know to what extent it would mitigate, but the whole intention is to set up these at-wise Cybersecurity Center of Excellence in Singapore, not only just for here, but across the region in Southeast Asia, to collaborate and bring in academia, which is, we have partner University of Waterloo, Besma and her team. And then we have IQ4 from the US, as well as AMTD, which is a fintech growing very fast, believes in the digital ecosystem. And we are also talking to the IBF, which is Institute of Banking and Finance, which is a thought leader in Singapore in the industry, to come together and work with some of these institutes like SMU and NUS to actually develop curriculum, not only just give them the practical understanding of what is that cybersecurity across network segmentation, patch management, or zero trust, but also deploy them in the corporate world, kind of an internship as part of that, so that their academic learning is actually applicable. They get to see what it means when it comes to a cyber attack and how do you defend through your SOC or Security Operations Center. And that relevance will make them much more marketable and deployable in the corporate world, so that we can build that resources quickly into the system rather than they going through the tougher route. So that a consortium is a combination, as I said, the industry, the professionals, and the academia, and then come up with summits, seminars, workshops, and also create some internship program of entry-level, mid-level, and senior certification, which we can deploy quickly. But I guess that's just a drop in the ocean, but that's at least a good start for us to start contributing and giving back. And I look forward to the support from all of you, particularly from the West, where things probably have matured a lot. And we can quickly come together, because the speed at which these adoptions are happening, it's really scary.
Yeah, there's a good representation in this panel that basically says, look, it can be done. Each of us have got pockets of experience that if we could only bring it together, that's going to be phenomenal. The kind of thing that I'm really thinking of is people think about cybersecurity because it's a sexy word, but ultimately what we're building towards is resilience. And there's risk and resilience, and that's, I think, something we've got to get across amongst everybody. It's what is the risk? What can we do about it? How can we protect ourselves? And how can we protect others? And with that, I think we're drawing to a close. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks.
Thank you so much.
Our sincere thanks to Peter and the fellow panelists on the insights into bridging the gap of cyber workforce.